those joining us online through different means, through the Clonard webcam and through Facebook and so forth. And Accidental Theatre, who have been a great help to us in the festival, have been doing a lot of work in the background, and we're very grateful to them for that. So we also want to say a special word of welcome. There are many wonderful special guests here tonight. The Minister of State for Northern Ireland, Conor Burns, has joined us this evening. Catherine, you're welcome as well here this evening. We hope everyone feels very, very welcome, and we're grateful that you have come out to join us. This year's theme for the festival is Common Ground, Common Good, and it's our 10th anniversary. And we're sort of at almost the midway point of the festival. And it's been a wonderful festival already. I was just saying inside to Carl and Mark, we started the festival with a personal message from Pope Francis in St. Anne's Cathedral. And the festival will sort of conclude with the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, in person in St. Peter's Cathedral. And tonight we have Carl at Clonard, and it's just wonderful to have him here with us. I know it's his first visit, his first time in Clonard, and that kind of captures something of the ethos of the festival, in people maybe going into new places and experiencing new ways of sharing this wonderful city that we so love. So just a few practical things before we begin. I'll maybe just ask Mark Sidebottom to come up now, because Mark, as many of you will be familiar with Mark, is local broadcaster, journalist, and he will be interviewing Carl, and he'll say a little bit more about himself, but we're very grateful to have Mark with us, who has spent, I think, over 15 years. He has known Carl, so it's wonderful to have Mark with us. So you're very welcome, Mark. So just a few practical items. There are questionnaires that you don't have to fill out now, but we'd be very grateful if at some point you could go online on the Four Corners Festival website. It's quite important for us as a festival with regards to the sustainability of the festival, and we want to hear your thoughts and ideas, and so that we can each year try to make the festival more and more special. So that's on the Four Corners website. And I just want to say a word of thanks to our funders, the Executive Office Central Good Relations Funding Program, and also the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Irish government have been very generous to us over the years in helping us put on the festival. We welcome donations. I know some of you have been to many events, and we don't like to be torturing people with all that, but you'll see the two tesseracts here. Well, you may not be able to see them. They're down on the floor there. And they'll be on the way out if you feel inclined. They're there for contributions, and we're greatly appreciative of that. And there are other ways of contributing to the festival, maybe becoming a friend of the festival, as a number of people have been. So again, we're grateful for any contributions. And we do have this little book that was put out just a past festival called Building a City of Grace, and that's been one of the aims of our festival. And that, for any contribution whatsoever, you feel free to take one of those books home with you this evening. So just by way of housekeeping, we don't expect any fire evacuations or anything, but if there was an alarm to go off or so forth, there's exits to your right and to your left, both up at the front and in the back and so forth. So, and I just want to mention one other, there are a number of events and still available throughout the festival. One tomorrow evening that there's still a possibility for, and it quite ties into this event. It's called a Game of Three Halves with Peace Players, and it's for young people aged 11 to 14. They'll be playing Gaelic football, rugby, and football. Soccer or football. So they play those games together. That'll take place in Queen's University, the PEC Center, tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock for 11 to 14-year-olds. And so much of that is around sportsmanship and a bit of fun as well. And I think it's very appropriate to have Carl here with us with an event like that taking place in the festival as well. So, maybe just before I introduce Carl to come in, we'll just take a brief moment of silence, just to gather ourselves. And we've all come from different places, different areas, different corners of the city. And just to maybe take a moment to give thanks for being here together in anticipation of the great privilege of listening to Carl and Mark in conversation. Thank you. So, I don't think Carl needs much of an introduction. First 2-8 world champion, global superstar. Mark was telling me earlier today when we met about when Carl fought in Windsor Park, which was always a dream of his, as many of us would know. And he was reminiscing when he said Carl was the headline, obviously, that night. But another boxer, Tyson Fury, who some may have heard of if you know a bit about boxing, and he was on the undercard that night for Carl. And that kind of gives you a sense of the level we're at. But I think almost more importantly, and I'm sure this will come out tonight, and I think many of you who are here this evening and who are joining us online will probably have experiences of another side of Carl, of, yes, the absolutely incredible boxer and the journey that brought him on. But maybe almost more importantly for many of us is Carl as a person. And I just wanted to share a very brief text message that Tony shared with me from his son David. And I would reckon that many of you here probably have similar accounts. But the text message that Tony shared with me last night, we were in East Belfast, the East Belfast mission. And his son David sent this text because he knew about this event taking place tonight. This was the text David sent to his dad. If you get speaking to Carl, tell him that I was in Vegas and will never forget meeting him the day after the fight and Carl apologizing for losing. He then bought a round of drinks for everyone. Can't think of another sportsman or woman who would have done that. And I think it's that sense of integrity. There's something very special about Carl, and it's amazing in preparation for this event when you just mention him, I just have not heard a single word other than, wow, yeah, this is, what an amazing person. So, without further ado, I would like us all to welcome for the first time to Clonard here and to the Four Corners Festival, Carl Frampton.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Clonard, and thank you to everyone for coming out this evening. When you hear the Pope opening the four corners and the Archbishop of Canterbury, it's a first for me, Carl. The Pope, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the two-division world champion. Is it a first for you?
Yeah, it is. I'm delighted to be here. Yeah, I was asked to do this quite a while ago, and I've been looking forward to it, so it's great to see such a great turnout as well.
I'm tempted to start by saying Four Corners welcomes you to the neutral corner. Of course, for those of you familiar with boxing, whenever this man laid someone on his backside, it was off to the neutral corner. I was up earlier with Father Martin, and just while we tend your mic, I'll tell you the story. So I walked in here, and I don't know, I'm not a particularly religious person, not particularly given to organised religion, but every time I walk into a place of worship, you get a sense of awe and a sense of inspiration. And I said to Father Martin, wow, this is like Belfast Sistine Chapel. So it is a real privilege and an honour for both Carl and I to be here this evening. And it's probably as intimidating a stage as I think that I've been on. But I walked around the corner then to the Conway Mill just to grab a quick bite of lunch. And as I was in there, Marianne, who runs Conway Mill, the little mill, asked me what I was doing, and I'd been in doing a couple of events there previously. And I said, oh, well, I'm actually doing an evening with Carl Frampton, and I'm wondering, I said, can you help me here? What's the big question? I want a killer question for the first question to this man. And Marianne goes, well, that's easy. He's from Belfast, isn't he? You just asked him, hi, Carl, what's the crack? So what's the crack?
At the minute, I'm retired since April. I've been pretty busy though, a lot busier than I expected to be. Doing a wee bit of punditry work for BT Sport, wee bit of stuff for BBC as well every now and again, and just going with the flow really at the minute, enjoying life, enjoying a bit of time at home with my wife and the kids, and just having the normal life that I haven't really had for the last sort of 10 or 12 years.
I know you're surprised that I'm sitting here. I better give a shout out to our mutual friend Declan on. Declan was supposed to be in this seat tonight, but Declan couldn't make it for unavoidable reasons. And I think Declan is one of the community watching online. So Declan, thanks very much for landing me in it, and get well soon, friend. Declan's given me a few questions that he has kind of gleaned from various different individuals we want to ask. And I'm going to go there, but just in terms of the format for this evening, folks, it's kind of a bit of light and a bit of shade, and we'll go with the flow, and we will welcome anyone from the audience who wants an opportunity to ask a question to this two-weight world champion and this global sports star this evening. It's your opportunity. Feel free, but I'll try and relax them first for you. I'll try and soften them up over the first few rounds. Second half of the fight, you can all go in with the killer questions and land a few blows. It's been unavoidable the last 18, 20 months, 24 months, lockdown, and I'm wondering just how you, as a boxer who's been bubbling all your life, has coped with lockdown. And in the interest of being straight and honest here, I found it incredibly challenging and testing at times, but for my little dog getting out walking. But were you kind of a little more geared for it?
No, I think it was difficult for everybody, but I suppose I have to count my blessings. I've got, I don't live in a high-rise block of apartments where some people I know did, and they weren't allowed to leave their flats or apartments for a while. I have a house with a nice garden and a gym that I can train in, so I was able to go and do that if I was ever feeling frustrated or whatever, go and hit the bag for a while. But it wasn't easy for anybody. But I realised a lot of other people were getting it a lot harder than I was.
Did it test your mental health?
Yeah, it probably did. But just getting out and getting a bit of fresh air every day, I think was key for me. And we were doing just a normal thing like everybody else, lots of walks. Just that was it really. But it was good to have a bit of it was probably the longest time I got to spend with my family really. And just being normal, while I was boxing. So I tried to take the positives out of it, and that was certainly one of them.
So I'm not sure who's given us this question, but this is one of the questions that's been emailed in. It's a good one for me. So it says, Carl, growing up in Tigers Bay, an interface, how conscious were you of the them's and us's of Belfast? And in turn, they say, as a boy, if someone had told you that you were going to marry one of them's, would you have believed them?
No, probably not. I think that you're very conscious of it living in a place like Tigers Bay, and I imagine the kids living in the New Lodge were very conscious of it too, in the Falls, in the Shankill, wherever you came from. But it was just you were brought up in this kind of bubble, and you didn't really know why, but because everybody else had a dislike for the guys across the street, you felt like that you had to as well. And as a young kid, you're easily influenced. People talk about kids being like a sponge; you just soak everything in, and they're influenced sometimes by the wrong people. And the guys that are in, the big boisterous guys who are kind of running Tigers Bay or the New Lodge or whatever, they're the guys that you look to, and you think they're your role models, when really there's better role models than people like that.
Was boxing a vehicle to steer you
Well,
away?
that was the vehicle, really, because I was very young when I started boxing. I was 7 years old, and from 7 or 8, I used to be in the New Lodge training in Jerry Story's club and Holy Family. My old trainer Billy McKee and Jerry had a great relationship, so I was always back and forward training in that club, and all over Belfast really, in different places, and that certainly helped change my outlook. I would say, that was a huge thing in changing how I just seen the world.
You mentioned two guys there, Billy McKee, and I remember way back in the early days, for those of you who don't know, I worked primarily in sport as a journalist, and I've known this man for 15, maybe 20 years. I knew him when he nearly couldn't string two words together. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but he was pathologically shy, and to think now that 15 years on, he's become a global ambassador for Belfast is remarkable. But I remember you hated the cameras, you hated the interviews, but I guess this journey, you've grown on that, and I'll get to that in a moment. But Billy and Jerry Story, two legends of boxing. Billy, of course, has passed on. But how much did they inform your political and religious approach, Carl, in the sense that they were completely devoid of any political baggage? They were very much gurus, irrespective of where you came from or what your background was. If you went into one of their gyms, that was it.
Yeah, I think both of them had the same kind of outlook and the same views, and as do many other, I'd say, boxing coaches around Belfast and Northern Ireland, and they have. It's just boxing. Everybody, when they walk through the door, no matter where you're from, what your religion is, you're always treated equally. Certainly in my club, by Billy McKee, we were always all treated equally. And I'm talking about religion here, but I'm also talking about how good you were. The top guys in the gym were treated like the guys who had one or two fights and maybe hadn't won a fight. So everybody was just looked at as the same type of people.
I was listening to you in a podcast, The Irish Patriot, recently, and I think if I got you right, you were saying that probably Billy McKee's biggest single achievement wasn't in producing you a two-weight world champion. It was in producing individuals who didn't fall into the social delinquent trap, who weren't tempted down that road of petty crime simply because of the discipline of boxing. Yeah. That's a big thing to say.
Yeah, it's a big statement, but that's what Billy always talked about, and he said that his biggest achievement wasn't creating champions. It was guys who were maybe close to taking the wrong path in life and going into a life of crime or whatever, and boxing put them on the straight and narrow. And there's so many stories like that where boxing has saved so many people and put them on the right path. But Billy always talked about, like, he was almost like an unqualified counsellor. A counsellor with no degree to his name, because the amount of people that came in through the door of different walks of life and different issues, and you're having to kind of manage that and handle each person on an individual basis. It's got to be difficult, and the people who run amateur boxing clubs and other sports clubs throughout the city, they're the lifebloods of the community. They're all volunteers. They're doing this for nothing, just out of the goodness of their heart, and they deserve so much credit.
Was there one single piece of wisdom he passed on which you occasionally pass on or can pass on to the youth? There's
nothing I can think of that springs to mind, but what I will say about Billy, he's the most honest person I ever met, and whether sometimes people didn't like his honesty, but it's just the way he was, and I liked that, and I respected that about him, and I admired it. Just a straight man, really honest, hard wee man as well. Wouldn't take anything off anybody. Had no fear of anybody either. And he was only about my height as well, a little bit smaller than me actually. But he was just a great guy, and always full of wee nuggets of wisdom.
Every club needs a Billy McKee, and almost every boxing club in Ireland, north and south, seems to have one. There's something about boxing, and especially boxing seems to be incredibly apolitical. Is boxing itself as a vehicle the ultimate cross-community vehicle when you look at Belfast? I know it's always struck me that there was probably a big divide. It struck me, loosely speaking, that maybe 80% of boxing in Belfast was nationalist and 20% was non-nationalist or unionist, whatever way you want to put that. Is that a fair enough?
Yeah, that's fair. I think you look at I suppose you look into the New Lodge. There's maybe 5 clubs in the New Lodge. You go into West Belfast and there's 20 clubs. From my club in Tigers Bay, the next kind of club along the road would be Monkstown. You're another 7 miles along the road, So I suppose boxing is seen as a sport for all and a real cross-community sport. But in terms of the dynamics of who does it most, it would be definitely more Catholics do it than Protestants. I don't know what the reason is for that, but that's the way it is. But it's always because of what we talked about earlier. People are all treated as individuals when they enter boxing clubs. I think that's why it's seen as the sport that brings people together. And it has. You've seen it even back in I'll say his name, Barry McGuigan days.
I'm going to interrupt. Ed had told me I'm not allowed. There's certain things I can't mention tonight. I can't ask the Minister for State anything about cake, and I can't ask Carl Frampton about Barry McGuigan.
We talk about even at the height of the Troubles, when he was fighting, what boxing done to the community. For that short bit of time, the fighting stopped in the streets, and it shows you what a powerful sport that it can be.
I'm going to ask you a difficult question now, given that you raised it, and I too would have been very close at the point professionally with Barry McGuigan, etc. And I know that history repeated itself with the whole Barney Eastwood scenario. But a few years back, when all was resolved, and I know that ultimately no one won, and you said the court case was resolved to your satisfaction. For those of you who are listening, I'm sure most of you are familiar, but Carl's former manager was Barry McGuigan, and ultimately they split, and it ended up in a settlement which was not publicly disclosed. But you did say at one point, I have a deep-seated hatred now for them. Have you, in the spirit of peace and reconciliation, as we sit in this church, and I'm serious here, I'm not trying to be trite or twee about this, but the point I'm trying to make is that peace and reconciliation, Clonard Monastery, I suppose the gospel here has always been one of forgiveness. Have you found that you've been able to soften, or is that a chapter which is written and will never change?
Look, it's happened a long time ago. I suppose over time I've softened, since I know the interview you're talking about and the words that I said, that I'll not repeat them here, but you have to be honest when you're in places like this, and I'll be honest, if he tried to approach me to shake my hand, I'd be telling him where to go.
Yeah, well that's and that's what I've always known about you. You were a principled man of integrity, and I can say that without fear of contradiction, because I have known you from the early days, and I remember way back when those first interviews, when you were going, I think I'm going to be a world champion. So I was going, I don't think this guy's going to be a world champion. But did you always believe? Where did beyond Tigers Bay, Carl, beyond Billy McKee, beyond those early days of running the streets in the north of the city, was there something there that set you apart? Was there something at some point you realised, you know what, I'm going to go all the way here? What makes the champion?
I don't really know. I've been asked that question so many times. It's a really difficult one to answer, but I had a firm belief that I could be a world champion. I knew it was going to be difficult. I just had this real determination. But I'll ask you, why did you think I wasn't going to be a world champion?
I'm looking at the Minister, Clonard Burns, here, and I'm thinking to myself, I would love to answer that question, but this evening I get to ask the questions, and this is not. Look, the reason I didn't think you were going to be world champion was nothing to do with you. It's because it is so difficult to become a world champion, and not only did you become a world champion, but you went on to do it at 2 weights. And that is a first for Belfast. That is a first for Northern Ireland. I think maybe Steve Collins did it.
Steve Collins done it before me, yeah.
But I mean, and that in itself is remarkable. So, I mean, what I will say is there was no one more delighted when you did it.
Yeah.
And in the interest of absolute transparency, I was well annoyed because I had a bit of a spat with Barry McGuigan too, and he'd more sway with the BBC than I was, so I couldn't be there.
Right, okay.
But in any event, the upshot of it is that you are now sitting here as a two-time world champion. So, and I'm wondering then, as a consequence, retirement is old Father Time is always knocking, is always talking. Does it make it that little bit easier, even though you thought, you know what, I could have landed a third one, that when you do walk away, that you have achieved what you've achieved, that you've summited, not only once but twice, you've been to the peak?
Well, look, I done more than I could have imagined I would have been able to achieve, so that's why it was easy to walk away. I would have loved to become a three-weight world champion and get into my last fight against Jamel Herring, who beat me. That was a chance to become a three-weight world champion, and in my head I believed that I could do it. But it's a very lonely place when, you know, you sit down on your stool at the end of the first round and you start to realise that already, you know, 1 round into a 12-round fight, I don't think I can be a world champion anymore. You know, it just kind of happens to you. Boxing's a sport where it's tough. There's so much, hard, grueling training sessions, sparring sessions, and then lead up to big fights to prepare you for a fight, and it just takes its toll on you. And I just didn't have it anymore. I wasn't as good as I once was, but I was happy with the things that I'd done in my career, and I couldn't really complain.
It leads me nicely into a question which has been emailed, and you were saying boxing is a solitary or lonely pursuit there. There is a question which says, given how lonely and solitary a pursuit boxing is, and given that on occasions fighters do lose their lives in the ring, how much is that at the back or at the forefront of your mind, and how much in time does that inform your approach to boxing? I guess the question distilled is, you can lose your life here. How conscious are you of that, or do you sweep it away?
Yeah, I suppose you try to sweep it away, and it wasn't something that I thought about at all up until, I suppose, the last couple of years in my career, the last 2 or 3. It's interesting, I'm reading a book at the minute called Damage by a guy called Chris Dixon, and it's about CTE and pugilistic dementia caused by boxing, and so many great fighters have had these.
CTE condition, the brain
a brain condition,
Okay.
Used to be called the punch drunk syndrome, so now referred to as pugilistic dementia. And you know, we've seen great fighters like Muhammad Ali have his issues, and so many other fighters. But he's the main man that we all remember, and he had these issues while he was boxing, and you could see it at the end of his career, his change in speech and how he talked and how he moved and how he walked. So it was important for me to get out at the right time. But that was something that I changed my training a little bit the last sort of 3 years. Once I left my former team, sometimes it may not make a lot of sense to people in here, but there was some fights I was sparring 220 rounds in preparation for a fight, which is incredible because most guys do about 80. So that's trauma to your head every day in the gym. And a lot of times I was sparring bigger guys than me. So in the second phase of my career, I decided to reduce the rounds. I'd done no more than 100, maybe about 80, like the average guy does. I always sparred guys within my weight division. But at the start of my career, I always had this thing where sometimes I'd spar. I'm a featherweight, so super bantamweight, 8 stone 10, 9 stone. I fought at really, they were my best weights. But I'd be sparring guys who fought at welterweights, 10.5 stone, and they're maybe 12 stone when they're sparring me. But I got this real sense of machoism about staying in there with them and being able to take punishment from a bigger man. But it's not good in the long run, and I think that was part of the reason why I kind of, after about 31, 32, you could see in my performances that they definitely decreased pretty quickly. When you look at guys like Kiko Martinez, who I've beaten twice, is now world champion again, and he's a year older than me. Yeah, so
he's 35, and I was going to talk to you about Kiko later, but two of the great fights, and I was there the night in Belfast, the European, and he was such a tough wee man. But look, I know it's over and whatever, but when you see him at 35 come back and win a world title, is there a little bit of you think?
No, but do you know what? There was a little bit, and I actually I watched his fight. I was delighted that he won because I have a real respect for Kiko, and although there's a language barrier, but we sent each other messages every now and again, and he's a great guy, Kiko. I was delighted he won that fight. But when he won it, the next day I went out for a run, and I hadn't done any training since I retired. And this was only maybe 2 months after I did retire, and I'd done about 5k. My knee was sore, my groin was sore, and that was the end of that. The comeback. Yeah.
I was at many of your fights, and I'll get to them on a Winter Park in a moment, but I was ringside the night in Manchester, the Joyce Warrington, and I remember after that fight going, I just hope you retire, because when you go 12 rounds, which were so attritional, and when you have to go beyond yourself to dig deeper into some primal or visceral well of resolve, I think that they can become career-ending fights. But the question then that someone has texted in, and the context of that is, when you are facing that down, when you are literally going on instinct, when you've gone beyond what is humanly expected or possible of you, does it make you acutely aware of your own mortality?
That's a very deep question, isn't it?
Well, it's not mine, but I'll claim it. But I guess I'm saying is, but remember the famous Ali Fraser, where they said, look, had it gone on maybe another minute or two, someone could have literally collapsed and died.
Yeah.
But some of your fights, only a few, but the two Santa Cruzes and the Warrington especially.
The Warrington one,
The Warrington was a war.
Fight.
It was a war. I could not believe that fight that night. I mean, it was almost like if it had been two dogs fighting, which is completely the raw. I would have separated two animals. It was like
it was the last fight that my wife was able to watch. She couldn't watch me fight after that fight. It was so brutal, and especially the first 3 rounds. And I suppose pride got me through that fight, because at a stage maybe, although I came back and won a couple of rounds in the middle. But I never really believed after how bad the first 3 rounds were that I could win this fight. But I didn't want to get stopped, and pride kept me in there. I just didn't want to get knocked out, and I wanted to finish the fight on my feet. I remember actually in one of the kind of early rounds, maybe first or second round, when he was throwing a load of punches, and I was all over the place, but his knee banged into my quad, and I had a bruise the day after, kind of filled my quad, and my leg was a little bit sore. So I was conscious of this, and I knew my leg was sore, but I didn't want to go back to the corner and tell Jamie Moore, my trainer, I have a sore leg, because I think that he would have thought that's me looking an excuse out. I'm going to throw the towel in. He doesn't want to say I can't do this anymore because he's a proud man, but that's his way of telling me to get me out of here. So I kept my mouth shut. I didn't tell him, but I just wanted to finish that fight. And I suppose because of how brutal it was, I did start to think, this can't be good. This can't be good for you. I have 2 young kids. I have a lovely wife at home. It's not good for them to be seeing it, and it's certainly not good for my head either.
But in terms of your psyche, you come away from, again, that podcast I heard you, I don't want to be too as graphic as you were, but you were saying, look, post a fight like that, I'm spitting blood, I'm urinating blood, and what goes through your mind when you're sitting in a dressing room? You've been world champion twice, you're defeated, you were bruised internally, you were bruised externally, your pride is bruised, but somehow or other, champions keep going. But so what I'm getting at is, at what point do you say enough is enough? Because not only do you then
allow yourself to go into that arena where you become selfish because you've a wife and family and kids, but you've got to consider others. And boxing is the ultimate in terms of selfishness. You go into your own bubble.
It was a difficult one, and probably for about 2 weeks after that fight, in my head I was a retired fighter, and without making an official statement. But the lead up to that fight had been very good. I'd been sparring really well. I've been doing PBs in the weight room and on the track, and I was flying, like, really. So I really think I got it wrong on the night. Like, I went into that fight, I thought that, because I've been in with big punchers before, and I've been able to take their shots. There's nothing to suggest Josh Warrington was a puncher. In his record, he'd only knocked out, 4 or 5 people in 30 fights. So I thought that, I knew it was going to be, he was physical and he was very fit. I didn't think he could hurt me. And I got that wrong, because he hurt me within 30 seconds, and he just continued to hurt me bad for the duration of the fight. So I started to try and think about it rationally, and I just thought that I got it wrong. It was a bad performance for me rather than me being done. And I came back and I had a couple of more fights, and one of my best performances was after that fight against Nonito Donaire, who's went on to become a world champion again, and as someone who I'm very close with now. So I still had these dreams that I could become a 3-weight or a 3-time world champion. Top Rank, who the promoter, they came and offered me this deal out of the blue. I couldn't really turn it down, and it's a shame it never worked out. But I would have regretted not having a go.
I'm going to open it up in a few minutes, but just a few others. Someone has taken time to write this, so I better read it as verbatim. Tonight, Carl, it says, as you sit here on the altar at Clonard Monastery, which has been so central to peace and reconciliation, how conscious are you, or were you, during your career, that you were a global sports person, but not just that, but an ambassador for brand Belfast? And now, post-fighting, do you feel that you owe it to your city to be a builder of bridges?
Oh, absolutely, and I was conscious of it throughout my career, and people know me, and they know where I'm from. But I never had to nail my colours to the mast. I didn't have to do that. I treated people like Billy and Jerry Story. When I was a kid in the boxing club, I treated them as I saw them, really. And if you were nice to me, I'm going to be nice back. But I think when you're given a platform like I've been given, whether I like it or not, you should use it for a positive effect. And I'll continue to do that if I can, and come to events like this, and a lot of the cross-community work I'm doing, and even work with integrated education, and even the hospice work that I do. It's I'll continue to do that.
I feel like I should be sounding a bell here to make you ultimately comfortable. I'm sure there's one in Clonard, big ones too. Quick question here, and this is a change of gear. Carl, are you a religious or spiritual person? What's your faith?
Well,
be careful.
To be honest, I'll be honest. I'm not a religious person, but I would say I'm spiritual, and I've been in churches, and I've been in chapels all over the world. I used to do it with my old coach Nigel Travis. Mad as a box of frogs. Like, this guy's a nut, but really religious, and if anybody dares say anything blasphemous around him, like, he'll take your head off. But this he's a great character, but never misses mass. Even during the pandemic, he was doing the Zoom masks and stuff like that. There's a couple of times I went early morning in New York with him. We were out training for a fight, and the jet lag and stuff. You were up at the Scrake, and I went and sat in a few chapels with him. It's just something about a church, where you get a sense of, I don't know what it is, peacefulness. It's just nice to do it. But again, I would say I'm not a overly religious person, but yeah, I would agree to say that I'm pretty spiritual.
I can relate to that. I mean, my job has taken me quite a bit of travel, and I find myself, especially when I'm abroad, gravitating toward places of worship, irrespective of what, all faiths, but because they're places of great peace, quiet, and I also think that the silence somehow or other is welcoming and subtle, and whether or not you're given or disposed towards a God or your God or whatever, I think it's always worth the trip. You somehow come out of a church or a chapel or a mosque or a synagogue a more kind of rounded, complete person.
Well,
and I don't want that to sound trite either, but can you relate to that?
No, and anytime I've been to a place of worship, no matter what the religion, I've been to mosques as well, when I've been in England. You just come out of it and you feel there's a good feeling about it. I can't put my finger on it. I can't tell you why, but there is.
This might be a good time to formally welcome again our Minister of State for Northern Ireland, Conor Burns. Conor, a Belfast boy, born, bred and buttered in the north of the city. He left here at the age of 9, but he's never really left here, and the government has allowed him to pop back. And I'm wondering if Michaela is out there. Minister, would you do us the honour of asking the first question of the evening? And bear in mind that Carl does get a right of reply here, so be careful. So thank you very much, Michaela. And thank you, Conor.
Well, thank you, and thank you for doing me the honour of allowing me to be with you this evening. It is a delight, I have to say, to be back in Clonard. I came to Clonard every Easter with my grandmother for the Easter trilogy, and I think my grandmother was one of only a handful of non-redemptorists who was buried from this church. I have incredibly fond memories and love of Clonard. I think I would like to ask you something about this society and what this society and the politics of this society can learn from sport. You're a unifier. You are cheered on by people of both traditions. Snooker is the sport that I love most, and I watched Mark Allen at the Northern Ireland Open at the Waterfront Hall, and he was cheered on by people from both traditions, both communities. Same with Dennis Taylor and Alex Higgins in the 80s. What do you think the politicians here could learn from the unifying power of sport? And what advice would you give them?
I don't know. I politics at the minute isn't. I suppose I don't think it's I wouldn't like to be a politician right now in this climate, if I'm being honest. And we're seeing lies being told and people being very aggressive. And I was often asked a question about would I ever get involved in politics, and I wouldn't. For a couple of reasons. I think I'm probably too honest. Second, I don't think I'm clever enough to spin answers when you don't want to, when you don't want to answer a question, you can just ramble on. I don't think I would have the capability to do that. But
You're not saying you're not clever enough to tell lies, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. But I don't know, it's a difficult question to answer. Sport is and boxing in particular, I suppose, has always been a unifying sport in Northern Ireland, certainly. In Ireland, I think that in this day and age, there's so many people are, Tories, Labour, Shinners, DUP. There's so much fraction, and they dislike each other, and there's so much aggression towards each other. I think we can all have our differences and different opinions, and we don't always have to be offended by a different opinion of someone else. I feel like I'm making a prime example of why I could be a politician, because I'm going off on a tangent a bit here, but I think that sport has always been. You look at boxing and what happens. Me and Josh Warren, you talk about that fight, and me and Kiko Martinez, them fights, they were brutal fights, and we fought tooth and nail, but at the end of it, there's an embrace and there's a respect for each other. I think maybe that's something that politics can take from boxing and sport.
That was a pretty good political answer, Minister. I think you'll agree. And given that we have you here, this is not a difficult question. I want you to be as politically neutral and apolitical as you can be. But I'm just, what have you seen change in Belfast since you were a boy? And how confident are you for the future? Now, I'm not giving you a party political broadcast platform, but speaking from the heart, as a Belfast boy, the changes that you have seen on the journey this city is on, where is it in terms of nearing completion of that journey, in terms of openness and transparency and lack of tribalism, or how much of a journey is still to go? So how much change is happening and how much needs to happen? You've got 60 seconds.
So look, that's a really, really good question. I was back at my...
If you don't mind standing up, just so the audience can get you, if you don't mind.
Stand up. I was back at my old primary school, Park Lodge, in North Belfast before Christmas, and one of the youngsters asked me, what's different today in Belfast from when you were here in the 1970s? And I said to them, well, there's one obvious change. Half of you are girls, and there were only boys when I was there. It was a brothers' school. So the second thing is, the army aren't on the streets, the police aren't in snatch Land Rovers. But I also said to them, we had those great agreements, and people took great courage. Negotiated at the very beginning, just down the corridor here, with Hugh Adams. But we live here in a society, you live here, I visit, a society that I think is living with a text-based absence of violence, and it is not a society that has genuine reconciliation. And those youngsters still wanted to know, was I a Catholic or a Protestant? In 12 years as a Member of Parliament for Bournemouth, no primary school child has ever asked me what my religion is, or wouldn't even know, most of them, what the religion of their classmates is. So one of the things I asked the Secretary of State when I was appointed to the Northern Ireland Office, by the way, only the second minister in 50 years in the Northern Ireland Office actually born here in Northern Ireland, I said I would like to have the responsibility for trying to push cross-community reconciliation and understanding. And I think the thing that I still believe here is that whatever tradition you're in, people have so much more in common and so much more that unites them. And I would love to see this society as one that embraces genuine reconciliation, mutual understanding and mutual respect, and isn't governed by treaties, but is governed by forgiveness.
Thank you for respecting the 60 seconds, and that was not a party political broadcast, but on behalf of the audience here at Clonard, could you let Stormont and Westminster know that it's fine to go toe-to-toe as long as you get common ground and embrace afterwards. That would be the message, I think, from Carl Frampton: common ground and a little bit of hug and a handshake. Carl, given that we've got, I somehow or other feel it as a society we need to be a post all of those subtle, intricate ways that we in Belfast and we in this part of the world go to. What's your name? What school did you go to? What job did you go? And sometimes I despair for my own kids. But I'm wondering, in your house, there's Carla, there's Rossa, there's Christine, and how then in turn has your, that horrible euphemism, mixed marriage, cross-community marriage, whatever, informed your approach to raising your kids in this divided city?
It hasn't really been difficult, if I'm being honest, because again, like I said, I'm not a religious person. Christine isn't a religious person either, so it's been easy really. The kids have just been brought up as kids really. It's funny just what Connor talked about there, the kids, wanting to know whether you were Catholic or Protestant. I live just outside Belfast. And I understand that would be the question that a lot of kids in inner Belfast would be asking, but I'm just outside it, and my little girl who's about to go into first year has no real idea about what a Catholic or a Protestant is, to the point where we actually played a game the other day of guess the prod and guess the Catholic, and she done...
How do you play that game?
So she thought... Prime example, you know by someone's name normally if they're going to be a Catholic or Protestant, but she thought Paddy Barnes was a Protestant, so she got that one wrong. But they've no understanding of it, absolutely zero understanding. I think some kids in her school do, because when she comes back home and there's certain questions asked to us, but I think that they just don't, they're oblivious to it really, and again, they have friends from both sides of the community, and they've been brought up to, if someone's nice to you, you'll be nice back, and that's it.
And off. It must gladden your heart to think that somehow or other your kids are not infected by that old malaise that for so long has infected this part of the world.
Yeah, and it was an automatic thing when you were a kid, and we mentioned it earlier on. It was a kid from Tigers Bay, the New Lodge, the Falls, the Shankill, wherever. You're growing up and around older people who you look up to, and just because they're older, you don't really know why you look up to, and they seem to get a bit of respect in the street. And these guys don't like them guys, so you listen to them, and you don't like them either. When you don't really understand it, you don't really understand the reason why. And if you want to ask these kids why do you not like this guy from across the road, they'll not really be able to give you a proper answer.
That's politics sorted. That's religion sorted. Let's get on to gender. Someone here said, Carl, be honest, who's the boss in your house? The two-time world champion or Christine?
What would you say?
I'm kind of thinking that in terms of the pecking order in your house, there's Carla/Christine, and then there's Rossa, and then there's Carl.
You're close enough. I would, there's Christine, Rossa, Carla, the two cats, and then I'm beneath that.
Do you have two cats?
Two cats. I didn't think I liked cats until recently, but we took a stray in, and then we got another kitten, and
wow.
dead fond of it, yeah.
Go on, what's their names?
Claudia and Arthur.
Claudia and Arthur. Oh, hey.
I'm a doggy man. We had a dog, we dog Manny, he just died a few years ago, and I was Christine's best friend. Like, she loved that dog, and it broke her heart when he passed away. But yeah, I'm a doggy. Well, I like cats now too.
Yeah, and you haven't replaced.
No, I think we got the cats in. I think Christine thinks that it's almost like you're trying to replace the dog, and she doesn't want to. She just doesn't feel like that yet. Okay, I'm looking at Michaela here, and Michaela's looking a little forlorn, and I am very conscious that Michaela's come all the way from North America to be with us tonight, and we appreciate that, Michaela. So Michaela has the microphone, and I think there's a few people who might have questions. Steve, maybe you as part of it, would you have a question for Carl? There's a few people. Now, do not feel under pressure, but it is your opportunity, and we would welcome, just informally, anyone who wants to throw a question away of Carl, please put your hand in the air. Do not feel compelled or obliged to, but yes, thanks. If you don't mind standing up, great.
Hi there, Carl.
How you doing?
Mark. I really appreciate your honesty this evening. It's been really inspiring listening to you, and as the Minister said, you are a unifier. I actually began my career working in the New Lodge as a youth worker in Artillery Youth Club, even I think before you were possibly born.
Yeah.
But I work with leaders now, and I always say to leaders, the most important quality is courage. And you've obviously got that in buckets, and I just wonder, do you know where you get your courage from?
No, I don't know. I don't know. It's a good question, but I really, really don't know, because when I was a kid and I started boxing, if someone in the street got a bit rough with me, I would have shied away, and I would never have got involved in a fight. I probably would have went home and not come out for a couple of days and hid away somewhere. But when I was boxing, I was good at it at the start. Like, I was okay, but I got this real sense of machoism, because I was better than the guys who were the loudmouths in the street, and that's one of the reasons why I really loved it. I don't know where I got it from. I was always very competitive in everything I'd done, every sport that I'd done. I always wanted to win, but I wasn't a courageous kid at the start, and I suppose that came a little bit later.
I have a follow-up question on courage. So, when was the last time outside of a boxing ring you cried?
Oh, cried today. Jeannie, who's here, Christine's aunt, and gee, I'm going to cry now.
If it's personal, you don't have to go there.
No, I'll tell you. Christine had a cousin who passed away, and she was younger than her there recently. So there was a little video sent through, and that made me cry a bit. I wasn't expecting this now.
No, it jumped at me, and I was kind of asking in that bigger sense, that whole issue of gender.
No, but I'm always.
Yeah, are you an emotional guy?
Yeah. Even films and stuff. Watching movies, certain movies. If you don't cry at A Star Is Born, and there's something wrong with you.
I feel, in the interest of the room and in the interest of those of you who are online, that the last time he's cried is 10 seconds ago, because there are tears welling in his eyes. And do you know what? It's incredibly reassuring that the guy, the king of the world in terms of boxing, is quite comfortable.
Even my last interview, I was crying when I retired in the ring. I was away in Dubai. I had no family around me. I knew my career was over. Very, very emotional. So I'm always crying. Yeah.
And is it therapy? Is it a release?
I suppose it probably is. Yeah. Other people, I don't know. I don't really know. I'm always crying. I think it was probably a whingy kid, probably when I was younger as well. I don't know what it is. I just, other people take their frustration and, have to go and punch a wall or whatever. But I just let the tears out, and that sorts me out.
Oh, what a great quality. I wish I had it. But it's kind of reassuring to know that big boys do cry. So thank you. It's 9 o'clock, and I'm loving it, and I'm enjoying it, and I want to welcome as much participation and involvement from the floor as possible. If there's anyone who wants to put a hand in the air, please do. We will come to you just 4 rows next. But if you want to identify yourself, you can. If you don't worry. But thanks for your question.
My name is and I've started a podcast talking to sports people. And with you doing work with BT Sport, do you have any advice on how to make yourself more confident?
Well, like Mark will tell you, I was very, very shy at the start. I remember my first press conferences. I was extremely nervous, and looking back, it's almost a bit embarrassing how nervous I was. But it was just alien to me. I wasn't used to it at all. So the more I done it, the more relaxed I got. It's just about doing it. Just keep doing it. The more you do it, you'll become used to it, and you seem pretty confident enough to already stand up and ask a question. You're ahead of where I was at your age, so I think you're doing all right.
What you should have been doing is saying, Carl, I'm starting a sports podcast, will you be my guest? You really should have gone there, but that'll be the next question. There's a gentleman thanks, Michaela. If you want to identify yourself, if you're comfortable, and make it a call.
How you doing?
Sean, my name is. Just have a question. Throughout our lives, I suppose everyone's common ground is trying to achieve happiness in that sense of fulfillment. Fame, fortune, travelling the world, 2-weight world champion. I'm just wondering, would you agree with the phrase that money can't buy happiness?
Yeah, I would agree with that. Some of the happiest moments in my life were when I didn't have money. When I was getting loans, not getting loans. My dad was giving me handouts to go anywhere. I was spending my wife's student loan at the time. I had no money, but I was happy. But what I will say is it can make things a lot easier, money, but it certainly doesn't buy happiness. So, you can go on nice holidays when you want, and you can have nice cars and nice houses, but it doesn't automatically mean happiness. But it certainly can help a little bit. Yeah.
I have a supplementary question to that. So, given that you had very much a working class Tigers Bay background, and given that you would have been exposed to the privations of that, Ken, I'm not saying that it was a struggle, but I wonder then, as a parent, and as someone who's, I hope I don't offend you by saying, but comfortable and middle or upper middle class now in terms of where you're at, how do you then assess? What do I give to my children? Do you go make your own way?
First of all, when you talk about the class system, I always feel like you are the class you're born into, and I will always be working class because I was born into that class system, and I don't think I'm not middle class, and I'm not certainly not upper class. My kids, because they have a kind of, I have more than my mum and dad had when I was younger. When they're older, they can probably be classed as middle class kids. But I understand what you're saying.
I'm kind of saying in a way that somehow or other, the hunger is born of working class, I think, right? And I appreciate entirely, I'm not suggesting at all that
yeah,
you
not all the time, but yeah.
I said, but your lifestyle is a much more comfortable one now. And I know as a parent, I'm wondering, do you think to yourself, you know what? It's a ham sandwich for you, and you're not having lasagna, or do you go like, I'll give you a little bit? Kids
are spoiled, isn't it? It's hard not to spoil in this day and age, and I think even, to a certain extent, my mum and dad would have tried to spoil me at certain times of the year, Christmas and birthdays as well, when it's just the way it is, and kids seem to get spoiled a lot easier these days. It's easier to go to B&M and buy a load of toys or something, you know what I mean? Kids can get what they want these days very, very quickly. I was just listening to something that Shaquille O'Neal said recently, and he has a lot more money than I do.
He's one of the great basketball.
One of the great NBA players, and he's invested in a lot of companies. He's money, he doesn't know how much money he's worth, but he is a young family, and his motto and what he says to the kids is, you don't get any cheese unless I get some degrees. So he wants them to achieve in school before he sorts them out with his money. I think that's nice. It makes them strive and work hard, rather than just having things handed to them on the plate.
I'm conscious that my questions are struggling here. I'll keep going. But has anybody got a better question than mine? I'm sure there's plenty. So, Michaela, just please, if you're, I'm struggling because of a pillar, but please fire away and let us know who you are if you're happy to let us know.
Hi, Carl. I'm Adam. I'm a kid from East Belfast that's here for a youth club, but I'm also a youth volunteer for them. My question to you would be, if you could give one piece of advice, any advice to a young person, what would it be?
I don't know. It's difficult. I suppose listen and take advice and listen to people. I spoke about Jerry Story and Billy McKee. These guys are just full of wisdom, in my opinion, and I always wanted to be like, I always liked to model myself on someone like Billy, definitely. I think that if you see someone like that, and when you get to a certain age and you realise what a good person is and what a role model is, try and base yourself on them as much as you can. I'm not close to what Billy McKee is as a man, but I suppose I've taken some of his values and tried to make myself better. So that would be it. Look up the good. Doesn't have to be sports people as role models. It could be a parent or a coach like Billy was to me, and just try and look at what they do and behave accordingly, really.
I've got a supplementary to that, because someone is kind of one which chimes or segues into it. It says here, Carl, fighters often talk about that intangible, primal, visceral space or place that they go to, this kind of well of resolve, which is something deeper and beyond the self. So in the context of what advice would you give to young ones, I guess, distilling from this question is, how important is it that when you feel you're just about to give up, that you find the resolve and the resilience to keep on keeping on? Yeah,
there's been hard fights where that thought comes into your head. First fight with Kiko Martinez for the European title was one of the toughest fights of my career, and I remember I shouldn't have been told this. The whole lead up to the fight, I was told that after 4 rounds he'd slow down and it'll be easy after round 4. And I remember going out for round 8 thinking, when's this guy slowing down? And that was built, that was into my head. So I got out of that situation myself. Like, I was thinking round 5, round 6, round 7, he's not slowing down, but I still stayed in there. And I knew that there was wee doubts and I was being hurt, and talking about, I was passing blood after that fight. One of my eyes was closed, my hand was bust, my eardrum was perforated. But there was, I don't know, just in them moments when you lock when you're head on head with him, it's just, I don't know, there's something inside that says that I've trained so hard for this. This guy's not feeling any better than me, probably worse than me, and that's the only reason why he's staying in these fights.
I suppose that takes us back to the ladies' question. That's courage, and wherever it comes from, you're just, I guess. And I know you're
trying
not
to be rational though in that moment. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
a sense of you're trying to think about things and be rational. And you know, when you're tired, you know, some people may think I'm busted here. I can't do this anymore. But you got to think about how this guy's feeling as well, and he's got to be feeling exactly the same, possibly worse than you. So.
Have you had that experience? I guess what artists or poets or might qualify as something like an epiphany, where you've gone, I think I'm out here. I think and somehow or other, whether it's character, whether it's resilience, but from somewhere you've gone beyond and found something to drag yourself up. Have you consciously gone there? Because I think, like, in the context of whether it's a spiritual dimension, whether it's a primal dimension, but in the context of the last 24 months. As a society, we've been so challenged, and I think people have found a way to kind of go beyond themselves. But as a sports person, as an elite sports person, what I'm asking is, have you got some knack of tapping into that, or do you just have that blessing or gift?
I don't have a knack. I remember when I fought Leo Santa Cruz the first time, I had a really good start to the fight, and then he had a good round around round 7 or 8. And he outworked me a lot, and that was his game. He was a high volume puncher, threw a lot of punches, took a lot of punches, but high work rate. And I had round 7 was probably his best round of the fight. And I remember going out for the next round 8, that in my head going out there, I was exhausted at this stage already, but to prove a point, I'm gonna outwork you in this round. Just so I have one up on you, and I'm not tired. I am tired, but you don't think I'm tired, and that's kind of the mindset that I have.
I'll throw up the more questions here, but this is my own question. And in life, I guess most of us, young, old, whatever, we have those sliding doors moments. And for me, one of the big sliding doors moments in your career, El Paso, 2015, your first fight on American soil. You're going network. I think it was on NBC or ABC, CBS, and you're up against this really tough but unknown Mexican. He's 22, Alejandro Gonzalez, and you get up off your backside. It's the first time you've been down in your career, not once but twice, and you go on and you beat him. And you come back to Belfast, and he goes back to Guadalajara, and a few months later, he's been shot dead. A drugs cartel, he and 2 others in the back of a 4x4.
It's Brandon and his uncle, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm, you know, so you come back and go on and become a world champion, but for you to have sweated blood and tears in a ring with this guy, and at 23, his life is gone, and it's gone because of circumstance. I wonder, you know, even now, and I know you dedicated after Leo Santa Cruz, you sent your shorts to his dad, but something like that, how much pause for thought does that give you, and how much, in turn, do you say to yourself, that was a sliding doors moment?
Yeah, it was hard to take when I heard the news, because he was a really nice kid, and I really don't know what happened in the lead up to his death, or why he was brutally murdered. It was a horrible story, but when I heard that, it was like, it just, I don't know, it really hit home. And I remember sitting down with him after the fight, and as you said, it was a big fight. It was on CBS, which is pretty much a terrestrial channel in America, so not a satellite channel. It was on ITV back home. There was plenty of people watching it. And he sat down with me after the fight, and he talked about, although I beat him in the fight, he talked about how that was going to change his life. And he's a young a daughter at home and a young wife, and it was just shocking. It was really shocking to hear that. But you're right. You talk about circumstance, and that's what it is. And we live in Belfast, which is a good city now. In the 70s and 80s, it wasn't a nice place to live, but it's a changing place. But I'm watching documentaries. I watched something on HBO there about a high school football team in Baltimore, and there's a kid that's had 8 friends murdered in the last 2 years. You know, it's circumstances and gang warfare and stuff. It's horrible and it's happening throughout the world. But this place where we are now, although it's seen its fair share of trouble, it's a good place now.
Yeah, it's probably an appropriate question, and although I've been doing a lot of heavy stuff tonight, but it feels kind of that we're sitting in Clonard, and it feels like these bigger issues sometimes beyond sport are interesting to go at. But given boxing's broader association with the criminal underworld, and given that, you know, there've been so many crass decisions, and there's been so much, whether you want to take it through the Prohibition era, 30s, 40s, gangsters, etc. And I'm wondering, you to me have got one great big strength, and that is you have got the most sound moral compass of any sports person, male or female, that I think I've ever met. And I can openly say that as someone who knows you over the last 15 or 20 years. But I wonder how uneasily that sat with you, that boxing, not all of it, but some of it, really is corrupt.
Yeah, it is. It's a corrupt sport. It is a corrupt sport, full of corruption, but as is a lot of other sports. But when I get into boxing, as a young 7-year-old, I didn't know about the corruption. I just fell in love with the sport. I wasn't thinking about financial gain or anything like that. I boxed because I was a quiet kid in the street and I was better than the loudmouths on the street. That's the reason why I got into boxing, and I loved it. And I think that if I didn't want to get involved in, if I wanted to get involved in any other sport, there's equally as much corruption. You look at, you know, football and the investigations around in FIFA and everything else. It's the world is full of it.
I'm not trying to demean or disrespect boxing. It was just a question I was going to ask. Yeah. And I'm conscious that Ed is standing over to the wings here, and Ed, I'm going to just ask for your nod of approval. We've been going for about an hour, and I feel like we're kind of, maybe we've got another 10 minutes. Are you happy with that? Does that feel right? Do you want to, or do you want to?
Yeah, that's maybe, I don't know if there are any more questions.
Yeah, I'm sure the few people, but. All right, I think what we're saying is we've entered the final round. So if there's anyone who would like to put a hand in the air,
can I ask a question? Does anyone know the Rangers and Celtic score?
Yeah, right.
3-0.
Who won between Rangers and Celtic? 3-0 to Celtic. I've got to ask a question, Carl.
Because I'm here. That's why.
So there you have it. If you're watching on our web, if you're in the Four Corners website, he's also giving football updates. And this evening, Celtic have beaten Rangers 3-0, and I think that takes Celtic level at the top of the table.
Point.
Okay, there you go. He knows more. So forgive us to the young man we held up there, but yes, please, with your question. Good question, Neil. Thanks.
Probably the walking out at Windsor Park. That was huge for me. And although it wasn't, I'd loved it to have been for a world title fight. It wasn't, but it was a huge achievement. People say it was a boyhood dream of mine. It wasn't, because when I was a kid, I'd never imagined that I could sell out Windsor Park, a football stadium. So it was only as my career progressed I thought that I had a chance of doing that. But walking out, the atmosphere was electric. It was, you know, it was raining, but it was unbelievable, and that's something that I'll never forget.
I was there that night. It was Luke Jackson, the Australian, and I was blown away by the fact that although he was rehabilitating and he was coming back out of it, but Tyson Fury was fighting in your undercard. This 6'7" giant and this 5'4" Belfast man who's probably got a bigger heart.
No, I tell you, well, it's hard. Tyson Fury has a huge heart, and you've seen his last few fights. He's a brave man. But people that in the lead up to that fight, people talking about Fury, and that's why if Fury wasn't on it, there wouldn't have been an extra ticket sold. I can tell you that for a fact. So it was the support I had was fantastic.
Right, you've been a brilliant audience, and I did see a few more hands going up, and I am going to incur potentially the wrath of Ed here and Clonard, but I am going to ask if there's one or two people who would like to have the opportunity to ask a final or two questions. Please do, especially if you're young, because there's a hand going up just behind you, Michaela, and I know Carl will be happy, and I know that we can we'll wrap up before 9:25. So please ask your questions, and they're most welcome, and we're very grateful for them. So you're going to, yeah, please, thank you.
As a young person in school, I find it very hard to stay motivated and do work and actually get up and revise. And I don't know about you, but I'm the type of person to take one hit and not be able to get back up for a while. And I was just wondering how you stay motivated to train or stay motivated in the ring when you know you're going to lose and all.
Good question. It's
yeah,
about motivation.
Good question. It's all. I always. It was hard to train. Get up at the screak of dawn and being away from my family and miss big things and my kids' lives and stuff growing up. It was extremely hard, but I always just knew that it was all for the greater good, really. And what I was doing now, although it was difficult and I was making sacrifices, that me, myself, my wife, my kids, my wider family circle, we're all probably going to benefit from it if I just keep doing what I'm doing and really, really blast on. So, although it's difficult at times in anything you do, but trying to stay motivated is difficult. Listen to inspirational people. Listen to little bits on YouTube and guys like David Goggins and stuff, and how inspirational they are about making people push on and stay motivated. That's a wee bit of advice that I would say.
Okay, we're going to take two more questions. So, yeah, young man there.
I'm Adam, and I do judo, and I know, especially over lockdown and stuff, since I haven't really had any fights coming up, and I don't know how to stay motivated for them because I feel like I'm training for
more motivation, Carl, than he does judo, and he's
Yeah, well, look, we're hopefully coming out the back of this, and hopefully things are going to free up now, and there's not going to be too much more restrictions, and we'll get back to competing and fighting, and it'll all just seem like it was a long time ago and just a distant memory at some point in your life. So just stay focused, really, and if you want to succeed and be a champion at whatever level you want to get to, just keep pushing on. It's been difficult for everybody, and I imagine there's been lots of kids in different sports who have given up because of what's been going on the last couple of years and the restrictions imposed around our sport. So just stick at it, because if you want it enough, then a lot of times then you can achieve it.
Yeah, and remember something too, Adam. Carl Frampton nearly walked away from boxing at 2021, 18, 19. He was thinking of joining the army, and then he lost a fight, the fantasy I think it was. We're not even going to go there, but he got back up. So thank you for your question, which was great, and good luck with your judo career. And whenever you come back here as a medalist, we'll maybe chat to you. Is there one final question which would maybe wrap up the? Right, I'm going to get two questions. Oh, there's a hey! You're going in again. I love it.
If you're ever free, I'd love for you to come on the podcast.
All right.
For the benefit of those of you who are online who might not have heard, that was the young man earlier who was starting up his podcast, inviting Carl to come on his podcast. So, thank you, and thanks, as Carl would have said, for showing the courage to get back up and ask that very important question. There's a little girl at the front, and I really do want to hear the question from this little girl. If you're happy, thank you very much. You stand up, and can we ask your name?
Yeah, my name's Ruby, and I was just wondering, what's your favourite strike in boxing?
My favourite
strike?
Favourite punch?
Yeah. I'm only a wee man, right? And jabs are typically seen as the big, tall fighters have nice jabs, but for a wee man, I had a good jab, I think.
He had a very punishing jab. And thank you very much for your question. So, before I invite Ed to come up and say a few words and conclude the evening, can I, on behalf of Carl Frampton and me, and also by extension Declan on, who was supposed to have been in this seat, say thank you for being a brilliant audience. Can we also say to those of you who have been with us in the four corners, joining us digitally and online, thank you. We trust that you've enjoyed it. I'm going to take a 10-second answer from you before Ed kicks me off the stage. One final question, and I'm not sure who tweeted or emailed this one in, but it said, Carl, in terms of legacy and career, can you distill for me, is it more important to be liked or is it more important to be respected, or do you differentiate?
For you? I don't think there's much difference there. I think respect is key, and this is something that I talked about it as well recently. It's going to take me a bit more 10 seconds to answer this, but being people talking about not worrying about what other people think of them, that was something that I used to my benefit. I worried about what people thought of me. I didn't want people to think that I wasn't a nice guy or I wasn't a good boxer. I was someone who wasn't dedicated to my sport. So because I was worried about the opinions that people may have had on me, people who I didn't even know, it always made me push on, I think.
Brilliant. So, on behalf of Four Corners, thank you very much from the neutral corner. On behalf of Carl and I, again, thanks just for being an audience. It does feel like somehow or other we are in a place and space where we're living again, and let's hope that we're all managing to push at the parameters of what the confines and restrictions have been, and I know that we will get the leadership we require from Conor Burns and all parties in Stormont and Westminster. Minister, thanks for gracing us with your company. Good luck in trying to sort the big house out, but please do. And a final word from me is a big thanks to Ed, to Father Martin and to Minister Stephen for the welcome they've given me over the last 24 hours. This has happened very quickly for me, and I couldn't have been made to feel more welcome. So thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it. And just before you give him a round of applause, Ed's going to draw the evening to a close.
Thank you, Mark. The opening night with Pope Francis, the book was called Let Us Dream. Let us dream. I know for those of us on the Four Corners Committee, Reverend Steve, Father Martin, Reverend David Campton, who can't be with us, and the others who are here, this night for us, in many ways, was a fulfillment of a dream that we would have had to have you, Carl, with us in a place like Clonard, an answer to prayer, if I could say that from our Four Corners perspective, and particularly to have you, Carl, and Mark, but the questions and the young people who are here tonight, I wanted to say a special word of thanks to you all. I know that Carl is the attraction, and as an ambassador of the common good, we celebrate really having Carl with us and as a representative of Belfast and the best of our city. And we're just so grateful, Carl. The word courage and humility, honesty, determination, vulnerability, all that Carl displayed tonight. And sometimes you think, well, what do we take? We head out tonight, and what do we take with us? And I think for each of us, probably, Carl has given us much to consider and to be grateful for. And on all our behalfs, and through Mark's leading the conversation with Carl, I thank Mark, and in a special way, I think we all want to say a big word of thanks to Carl himself. And I know Carl's wife Christine and Carl and Rossa couldn't be here with us this evening, but Carl will keep you and your family in our prayers in the Four Corners Festival and here in Clonard as well. So just as you leave, a reminder about the questionnaire in your own time through the website. Again, the little donation boxes are there, no pressure, but and we ask that if you could exit through these doors, just with regards to COVID, we kind of have a one-way system here. I know there's probably a great temptation. I don't know how we manage this now and how Carl gets out of here. But as Father Jerry Reynolds, who was a priest here for many years in Peace and Reconciliation, he often said, well, just let it unfold. So we'll let our departure unfold together. And again, thank you all for coming out and a very safe home. And finally, just want to say, night prayer, which happens every night at 10 o'clock during this whole festival, usually coming from Jim Deeds' home, and I know Michaela on our committee has been helping with that. Tonight it's coming live from here. It's just going to be where Carl and Mark are sitting. So you're all very welcome to join that online. I do think you just have to register, but I think you get your link to that night prayer, the opportunity of giving thanks for this evening, and for Carl and his incredible journey. So again, that's at 10 o'clock this evening. So you'd be very welcome at that. And again, safe home to everyone. Thanks for coming.